The War of the Worlds. My name is not important. What is important is that I was there, a witness to the great disillusionment. In the last years of the 19th century, I was an astronomer, and like many, I spent my nights in the silent, cold dark of my observatory, gazing at the planet Mars. I saw the old canals, the reddish deserts, and then something new. A green flare of gas erupting from the planet's surface, a silent, emerald puff against the void. Then another. I telegraphed the observatory at Cambridge, and the news spread. Humanity, in its arrogant certainty, was being watched by intelligences greater than our own, across the gulf of space, with envious eyes. A few nights later, the first of the falling stars landed on Horsell Common, not far from my home in Woking. It was no meteor. It was a metal cylinder, 30 yards across. Half buried in a massive pit, its impact had gouged in the soft earth. It hissed and steamed, dull and heavy, and it radiated a faint, unnatural warmth. A small crowd gathered, a mix of curious locals and eager scientists, buzzing with excitement and wonder. We had a visitor from space, a message in a bottle thrown across the cosmic ocean. We could not have been more wrong. For a long time, nothing happened. The sun set, and the cylinder lay inert. Then, we heard a sound from within, a grinding, scraping noise, as if some immense screw was being turned. The top of the cylinder began to rotate. With a final, deafening clank, it fell to the ground. From the Stygian darkness of the opening, something stirred. A gray, snake-like tentacle emerged, glistening in the lamplight, then another. Finally, the Martian itself pulled its leathery, pulsating body into view. It was the size of a bear, with a V-shaped, lipless mouth and large, dark, intense eyes that regarded us with a cold, unemotional scrutiny. A small deputation, including the astronomer Ogilvy, decided to approach the cylinder under a white flag of peace, a symbol they could not possibly understand. They were brave, foolish men, walking toward the pit. From the dark interior, a strange, funnel-like object rose. There was a blinding flash of light, a puff of green smoke, and a silent, invisible beam of intense heat shot forth. The men vanished into momentary puffs of flame and black dust. The heat ray swept across the common, and in an instant the dry grass and gorse bushes exploded into a roaring wall of fire. Panic erupted. I made it home, my mind reeling with the impossible horror I had witnessed. Later that night, as a thunderstorm raged, a new terror arose. From the pit on the common, with a thunderous crash of metal and a series of concussive thuds, the first of the Martian fighting machines stood up. It was a tripod, a walking engine of glittering metal, 100 feet high, with jointed, articulated legs. It strode over the treetops, a monstrous silhouette against the lightning-streaked sky, its single headlight cutting a swath through the darkness. The invasion of Earth had begun. There was no fighting this enemy. There was only running. I found my wife, Carrie, her face pale with confusion and fear, and bundled her into a horse-drawn cart with our meager savings. We joined a great, panicked flood of refugees fleeing the town, a river of humanity flowing away from the terror. "To Leatherhead," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. "We will be safe with your cousins." Behind us, the sky glowed a sickening red with the fires of Woking, and the ground shuddered with the footfalls of the tripods. The chaos on the road to Leatherhead was overwhelming. Near the river, a second tripod appeared, wading through the water and blasting everything in its path with the silent, deadly heat ray. Our horse, screaming in terror, reared and bolted. The cart overturned. In the stampede of fleeing people, I was separated from Carrie, her name a desperate cry on my lips. I had to abandon the cart and run for my life as the tripod's massive metal foot descended and smashed it to splinters. I was alone. I fell in with a soldier, an artilleryman who had escaped the destruction of his battery near Weybridge. He was filthy and shell-shocked. "It's no good," he said as we watched from the relative safety of a ditch. Our cannons, they just bounce off 'em. It's like shooting peas at an ironclad battleship. They just stand there, taking it, and then, whoosh! We watched in horror as a tripod methodically destroyed the Army's cannons, one by one, with precise blasts from its heat ray. The best of our military was being swatted aside like flies. The Martians unleashed a new, more insidious weapon. They fired canisters from tube-like guns that burst on the ground, releasing a heavy, oily black smoke. It was not a gas that dispersed. It was a creeping, ground-hugging poison that rolled forward like a tide, killing everything it touched. I saw men and women caught in it, their bodies contorting before they fell. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached, the black tendrils of the suffocating smoke just yards behind me. As I fled through the ruins of a village, a fifth cylinder screamed out of the sky, a green meteor trailing fire. It obliterated a house directly in front of me in a cataclysm of brick and timber. The blast threw me through the air, and I awoke in the darkness of the scullery of the ruined home, bruised and disoriented. I was not alone. A clergyman, a curate, was there with me, his face pale and slick with sweat. We were trapped. The Martian cylinder, still glowing with heat, was right outside our shattered prison. For 15 days we watched the Martians from our prison. We saw them up close, these strange, sluggish creatures from another world. They did not walk. They crawled and slithered, their tentacles manipulating objects with surprising dexterity. They communicated with strange, siren-like hooting sounds, and they were busy, using nimble, metallic handling drones to assemble their terrible machines with a cold, alien purpose. They were remaking our world to suit their needs. We saw how they fed. A sleek, multi-limbed handling machine would pluck a captured human from a large wicker cage it carried, a cage filled with the living and the dead. It would then hand the still-living person to a Martian, which would, with a dreadful deliberation, feed upon their fresh blood. The curate sobbed and prayed, but I could only watch, frozen in a state beyond mere horror. We were no more to them than cattle in a field, a resource to be consumed. The confinement and the constant, visceral horror finally broke the curate. His faith curdled into a fanatical madness. He began to talk loudly, then to shout, convinced he was a prophet chosen to deliver a sermon to these new, terrible gods. His voice was a beacon in the silence, a dinner bell for our captors. He ranted about the sins of mankind and this divine punishment, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that he was going to get us both killed. I had no choice. I reasoned with him, I begged him, and finally I fought him, knocking him unconscious with the butt of a meat cleaver to silence his dangerous ravings. But it was too late. A metallic tentacle, a sensitive, investigative probe, snaked through a hole in the wall. It explored the room, then wrapped around the curate's still form and dragged him out into the pit. I scrambled into the coal cellar, not daring to breathe, as the Martians searched for the second source of the noise. After 2 more days of silence, the Martians moved on. I crawled from the ruins into a new, terrifying world. It was red. A strange blood-red weed had grown over everything with astonishing speed, draping the trees, choking the rivers, and covering the houses in a crimson, fleshy blanket. The air was thick with its coppery scent. It was as if the earth itself was being digested, terraformed, and remade in the alien image of Mars. Driven by a faint, desperate hope of finding my wife, I made my way towards London. But London was a ghost city. Silent, empty, and dead. The only sounds were the wind whistling through shattered windows and the cawing of crows. The streets were coated in a fine, inert layer of the black powder, and the relentless red weed was beginning to creep up the walls of the great buildings, strangling the life from the heart of the empire. In the ruins of Putney, I found the artilleryman again. He was full of wild, feverish plans. Humanity would live in the sewers and drains, he said. They would become a race of intelligent rats, stealing Martian technology, publishing books, and building a new society underground. One day, he declared, they would rise up and retake the Earth. I listened to his frantic, brilliant dreams, but I saw only the despair of a man clinging to the last vestiges of a shattered sanity. I left him to his fantasies. I had lost all hope. My world was gone, my wife was likely dead, and I was utterly alone. I walked towards the Martian encampment on Primrose Hill, ready for the end, almost welcoming it. As I got closer, I heard a strange, wailing sound, a mournful, repeated cry of, "Ula, Ula!" I saw a tripod standing perfectly still on the hillside, its metal body stark and motionless against the sky. It was not hunting. It was wailing. I approached it cautiously, my suicidal despair replaced by a profound curiosity. The wailing had stopped. The machine was silent, derelict. I climbed up its immense leg and looked into the cockpit. The Martian was dead, hanging limp and lifeless from its control levers, its tentacles draped over the machinery. All around the hill, the other machines were still, their pilots slain not by men, but by something far older. The invasion was over. They were not defeated by our weapons, which had proven useless. They were defeated by the smallest things God in His wisdom has put upon this earth. They were slain by the germs and bacteria of disease against which their systems had no immunity. They had conquered our planet, only to be slain by the microscopic life in our air and water. The Earth was ours again. In time, I found my way back to my ruined home, and there, by a miracle I will never understand, I was reunited with my wife. We had survived, and in the quiet of the new world we held each other and wept for all that was lost.